Here we go. E. 1, 2, 3, and.
Music is a way of communicating with anyone across borders, like any language, any kind of person, like even if they can't speak, like they can understand music. And jazz is like the only form of music where you can do that spontaneously.
I chose NYU just because I was really bent on coming to New York and just being in this environment, being in this where the music lives. I think that this is really where jazz lives.
The Jazz Studies program, I mean, it's really surreal being in such a small space, walking down the hallway and like running into Mark Turner, who like I've been listening to since I was 14, and like I just couldn't even imagine having ever met him, let alone just like ran into him in the hallway at school. So it's just a really incredible experience, and everyone is so friendly. Like you could go up to Chris and ask him a question, like Chris Potter, or like Lenny White is, you know, really great friends with a lot of the students too. Like everyone's so accessible.
Some of the faculty that we have are world-renowned artists that I've found happen to be inspired teachers as well. Some of these people include John Schofield and Joe Lovano and Chris Potter and Lenny White and Billy Drummond and Peter Bernstein and Adam Rogers and Mike Richmond, etc. So we have a wide variety of artists to choose from.
I feel like I made the right choice. I feel like in NYU's ensembles I'm getting to play with guys that I would love to play with otherwise, and everybody is helping me kind of get to the next step. Alex Sipiagin has let me sit in at his gigs before, and he's totally cool to do projects together. I've got a gig coming up with Ari Honig. I got another gig coming up with Brad Shepik. All these guys are down to play, and Lenny White has even offered to produce an album of mine. So all these faculty members, all these great players and great people are there for us. They're there to help bring us to the next level.
Every year for the past 15 years, we've featured the NYU Jazz Orchestra conducted by Rich Shemaria.
Rich Shemaria's arrangements of those pieces were absolutely incredible.
I always feel like he can get right to the essence of what a tune is. Whenever Rich arranges a tune, he's never thinking of the tune as a tool or instrument to serve his own compositional agenda. He's always trying to serve the original melody the best.
It's true. I always try and retain the basic in the content of the music and the intent of the music as well. But I always end up putting, my own twist or my own take on the music as well. So that's why a lot of that sounds the way it does.
I had heard those pieces before, but just the way he arranged them for big band, it was like a whole new way of playing those tunes. They were really awesome.
Each year we select somebody who's one of the great seminal artists that we've admired and have interactions with. And this year we've chosen Randy Brecker and his wife Ada, who we thought it'd be nice to include a couple, which is rare. Ada's pretty much taken over the tenor chair of the Brecker Brothers band, so we thought it would be interesting to pose those two together with new arrangements written by Rich Shemaria.
What the students get out of this is, first of all, a chance to have almost like a great master class with Randy Brecker and also with Ada, who are top-notch professionals. This is like the master and the apprentice type of relationship that's been going on for a generation.
But I always had a foot in education and started doing workshops, I guess was regularly in the mid-'80s, all over the country, and playing with college bands. I just gained a lot of insight and knowledge just from the enthusiasm. You know, it just keeps me young doing this, seeing the enthusiasm with which the kids play and perform. I probably used to do this. Maybe we should trade. Okay.
I have a pretty unusual upbringing into jazz, so when I do with Randy, we have such a different upbringing and cultural and also age-wise. So it's for the students is good to see how, you know, people from a very different upbringing can come together and talk kind of the same language. It doesn't matter the age, the background, the color. So it's just a different way. And especially seeing a woman, we are still kind of a minority.
Playing with Ada Rovatti was amazing. I'm also a female saxophone player, and there are not too many of those that are really well known, so it was pretty amazing to get to share the stage with another female saxophonist, and she just sounded incredible. It was really inspiring for me.
I had a conversation with Rich, and what I told him was I just didn't know what Randy looked like now. I didn't know. I'd seen videos of him, older videos, and so I just didn't know what to expect. I've never heard him play live at anything. So he walked in, and I just didn't really know what to expect. And when he started playing, instantly I knew he was just a fantastic trumpet player.
You know what might be nice if it retards, like, don't you think, like starting maybe here or just slow it down? Maybe like
3, 4,
1,
3 or
2,
4 bars
3, 4. Yeah, there's a phrase like counting the last, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the end of the 5th bar of J.
Randy Brecker, of course, is one of the legendary jazz trumpet players of the world. He was very involved with jazz fusion movement, specifically with his brother Michael, and the two of them had, of course, one of the most famous musical organizations of all time, the Brecker Brothers band, which produced a lot of albums, great concerts, great music. It was terrific stuff.
I'd listened to a ton of Brecker Brothers stuff, like, of course, as any saxophone player kind of has to. I listened to a ton of it, the Brecker Brothers live in Barcelona. And I'd watched it probably 20, 30 times, you know. It's just, I can hear it in my head now, right, as I'm saying this. I can hear the sound of the video, the sound of the music. And so, at first I was just listening to a great trumpet player, but then there was this moment where he played kind of a high note, not super high, but a high note. And I just heard Randy Brecker. I heard his sound. I heard the sound of, you know, the Brecker Brothers, and it was so interesting because, you know, that's his sound. I feel like it's his personality more than it's his sound, and it's so cool that even that video is probably what, 10, 15 years old, and he still sounds like that. And he's sitting in this room in New York at NYU, and he still sounds like that.
Great tone. I love his tone. Beautiful beautiful sound, and terrific sight reader, great section player, all-around great trumpet player.
And this actually probably might work because there were more solos. We'll just play it as written, and we'll trade. Because then if we each play, it's too much of the same thing.
Randy and Ada, to make sure everything's correct, get used to the solo order and all these things, right up until our performance, which will also have one more sound check at the Blue Note, and then we'll hit for 2 sets.
The Blue Note is a great venue for NYU. We've had a great relationship with them for over a decade now.
Blue Note is an iconic jazz club. It's always quite surreal for me to be playing on the same stage that guys like Chick Corea, Ron Carter, Roy Haynes have played on sometimes just a few nights before.
The Blue Note Jazz Club is one of the figureheads in jazz performance venues in the world. We're most fortunate to have the club within a few blocks of our campus within our school. And I've actually accessed a relationship with the Blue Note now for over 15 years, that we work at the club once a month with student and faculty-led performances at their Sunday brunch. We have a variety of opportunities. We have students work internships at the Blue Notes to learn about the music business side of jazz. The Blue Note has been extremely supportive about their connection with NYU Jazz, and I'm very happy to have them as a partner.
One, two, three.
Warming up for the performances, there's always like a bit of uncertainty because we've been working on this music for so long, but of course without the guest artists. So there's this whole new element of uncertainty that gets introduced, because even though, you know, they know the charts really well, like maybe they just decide like, I am just gonna go play one chorus there and then go to the next section and they'll start playing the melody. And you're like, wait, now we have to jump to that section right now. So it's great to be super prepared, but there's always gonna be that whole new level of uncertainty and adventure when you're playing with like musicians like that.
It's always a two-way street when you're playing with anybody in music. There has to be give and take, and there has to be a conversation. And I always try to impart that aspect to it to students, because that's a hard thing to learn sometimes when you're younger. That you're not in a little box. You have to listen to the music that's going around you and respond.
I'm always amazed at how the students are professional. The level is so high that when I started back in Italy, you know, students were students, and now the level you see in a college is just a professional level. So it's very inspiring.
One approach I got from Ari Honig, and you'll hear this in a lot of the great jazz players, is they're always thinking about the melody. If they're playing Humpty Dumpty, they're always humming that melody in their head. You know, and they're keeping the form that way. So that melody gives them a certain sense of groundedness in the form, and then from there, you know, it's thinking about chord changes. But I find it's more important for a melody, an improvised melody, to have integrity in its own right than to trying to fit everything through this kind of narrow keyhole of chord changes and harmony.
You just start reacting, you know, you're not necessarily playing all the right notes, you're not necessarily hitting every chord change, but you start to just hear what's going on around you, and you start to play, rather than playing scales that you know work over chord changes, you start to play melodies that you hear, that you think sound good, adding to everything else that's going on. So it's just more of freedom. It's accepting that you don't really know if what you're going to play is going to sound good, but you know that it's truthful and you know that it's coming from your, I don't know, this sounds kind of cliche, but coming from your heart rather than your mind.
Much is internalized. When I see a set of chord changes, unless they're really difficult, then I have to sit down maybe at the piano and write out some scales. My brother did the same thing, write some scales in the part, really go over the changes. But for the most part, on easier tunes, because I've been doing it so long and I develop my ears pretty well, I can hear a lot of stuff. But at the same time, I am thinking of the changes, but they go by quickly. You know, it's just internalized. I can look at a set of changes and pretty much hear what they're supposed to sound like. And when somebody plays, for the most part, I can hear the quality of the chords.
If I'm comfortable with a tune that I know enough and I play enough, I don't, of course, need to read. I have already in my mind the chord progression and the sound, and I just follow just the sound I have in my mind. If I'm reading, you know, music that I'm not used to, so I'm kind of keep an eye also on the chords progression. Even if sometimes I can hear maybe alternative chords or reharmonization, so I go with my whatever I hear in my brain.
Mind is a multiplex when you play jazz. You have to remember where you've been, you have to know where you are in the tune, unless you're playing free where there's no form, but I like these days kind of playing within a framework and knowing where I am, and I often have to think ahead, knowing where I'm going. So it's there's an arc to the solo. And you think in a way abstractly, colors and shapes and speed and things like that. So it's a lot of stuff going on at once.
It's just amazing actually getting to play there, especially with really historic figures as well.
When I'm playing with bands that I love, with musicians that I love, and I kind of just forget about everything, about every problem I've ever had, about, you know, I feel like the only time I'm really able to live in the moment